need to find this place or we'll be late.
Make a left on Astrology Avenue. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant right. It should be right here. 444 Spearway. Oh, turn.
It looks like Renee. Yay, we're on time. The James and Kelly Show.
Great, let's start the show.
So, Shirley, let's talk about difficult people. Like, what kinds of difficult people are there out there?
Well,
I mean, if we just do common
in my most professional expression,
yes,
there's a shit ton.
Right. I know.
That's good, Jeff.
But it's all on a continuum. I mean, it's the garden variety difficult people that I think we're going to talk more about today, and then the more I guess we can say pathological ones that are more the personality disorders that you and I are going to do
Are they mental conditions with those people? Or is it also emotional?
A personality disorder is a disorder of someone's personality. So that means that it's a disorder of kind of their makeup, of who they are. So because it's their personality, they don't know they have it. They're like, I'm fine. It's your problem.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And they blame everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. So it's different than a mental illness. We consider, which we shouldn't use that word anymore, a mental illness like, bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. So those don't feel good and we want to do something about it. But that's different. That's more of a like chemical imbalance in your brain.
And there's medication for that. Yes. Yeah.
Personality, it's who I am. It's my personality. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
If you've got a problem with it, then that's you.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it so difficult, because most of the time there's no awareness, and without it, you can't change anything you're not aware of.
Right.
So we're going to get more into that, Kel, when we do our.
On February 25th, we're going to be talking about narcissists, surviving a narcissist.
Anyone has a narcissist in their life?
Oh my God.
We only have an hour show.
It's exactly.
I know, right? Yeah.
Oh my God! But Shirley and I and James, you're going to be taking the class too.
They're doing levels of narcissism too. You'll talk about that.
Oh,
yeah, because they're on a continuum.
They're on a continuum. We'll get into borderline, sociopath.
We'll
hit it all.
A visual aid too. So.
Yes, we will have that. Absolutely, and we're going to have really good stories about each one.
Yeah,
and we've experienced it all.
Oh my God! I say we're the Jane Goodall of personality disorders, right? Because we've lived amongst them. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Between the two, you worked like what, 50 years, 60 years between two
together.
Yeah.
And if you add my mom to that, because Shirley was my mom's psych assistant.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I was Shirley's psych assistant. Yeah.
I just saw her mother and father behind her.
I said, James, we're getting on. James goes, I have to tell you something. Your mother and father.
I know.
What?
I heard you say that, and I went, "Oh, Lou."
I just say what I say.
Probably because I'm going to New York. That's probably
right.
That's why you saw her, James.
Yeah. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. But definitely, I mean, there are very real tools to work with all difficult people, which we'll get into today, but specifically narcissists.
Those three, you mentioned the body, knowing your body, the grounding, and the observation. I mean, those are fantastic. And how does that get into, you talked about a little bit earlier, non-judgment? Because a lot of our reaction wants to be, I'm going to judge that person, because if we judge someone else, we feel better then. So we have to really not be able to judge them. We can observe them, right? But we don't want to judge those people.
No.
So it's a little weird there, right? Because you got to be observant of who they are and their behaviors. But like, can you judge them? Just say, well, that's the way they are, and it is what it is.
Well, I think at that point you actually have to look at yourself first, don't you, Shirley? I mean, and say, what is going on here? I mean, literally look at yourself.
Well,
am I being this or am I being that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're with someone like that, then it's always an important step. What about me?
Right.
Chooses someone like this or wants to be with someone like this. But also, there's also that piece, might I be contributing to this? There's also a very important piece, not to blame yourself, but to always look at that piece. And sometimes it's just to know that this is who they are. And so then you really have to do a lot of, self-care and boundaries. And, if you have to engage with them on a daily basis, I always say, know your audience and speak their language. Right. So if it's someone who, is a victim, or, views the world through the lens of a victim, or Debbie Downer, and they're always kind of pulling at your energy, right? To know that about them. Not, again, to go with you, James, as a judgment, but just kind of as a fact.
Energetically, that's, if you want to be around that energy, fine. If not, bye-bye, because I don't have time for it. Life is
exactly. Or talk to them, even if it's a parent, talk to them only when you're strong enough to, to enter that energy, that energetic space.
Something else really I want to talk about, which Kelly taught me many years ago, and I say it every week, but she taught me this, which really, really has helped me. She said, James, don't expect that from that person because they're limited. They don't know any better. Yeah. And a lot of these people, they have no clue. They're like third grade level with people when they were seventh grade, and they're at third grade. Who we judge because that's all they know. That's
exactly.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kat.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the biggest mistakes we make is to expect people to act like we think they should act.
Yeah.
Right.
And we need to expect people to act the way they've shown up.
And also, Shirley, I mean, it's so interesting because I tell people when you meet somebody, you're not only meeting them, you're meeting all of their experiences from behind you, mean their family and their friends. Yeah. It's like a moving van that you're meeting there.
So true.
They are today, right? That made them who they are.
Yeah.
And let's talk about when people have a trouble with conflict, Shirley. They have a fear of if there's a difficult person in their life, how do they deal with that person? Because they're afraid that they will create conflict. And people are afraid of conflict.
Yeah. Well, if you come from a very if there's a lot of chaos in your family or a lot of fighting, then you want to avoid conflict at all costs. But you're also then doing it at your own expense.
Exactly.
So when someone does something that hurt your feelings, to be able to say, wow, what you just did hurt my feelings, or that made me feel like you didn't, whatever it may be. Some people won't say anything because they want to avoid conflict, but then the person keeps, doing it over and over again.
Somebody that comes into your life, and if they're pushing all your buttons, I mean, you really do have to start to establish boundaries. You have to start to stand up for yourself, and you have to learn to deal with conflict. I think conflict is part of the nature of being on earth at this time. You have to understand yourself and understand how you deal with conflict. And you learn a lot about, and it gives the other person possibly an opportunity also to make a change in the relationship. Because I've had difficult people in my life that, ironically, through some form of conflict and resolution and coming back together, we've actually been able to be good friends. So I know it's possible.
Yeah, that's just it.
Not with everybody, not with a personality disorder.
Yeah, those are separate. But you're absolutely right, because sometimes we avoid conflict, but then we're really cheating the other person out of maybe stepping up to their highest potential, because we want to avoid conflict.
And our highest potential.
And ours as well, too. Yeah. So it's not always and conflict doesn't have to be, yelling and chaos. And it could just be really stating what,
your
how
needs,
the person made you feel, or your needs. Yeah. And how they, I was just going to say that if you do it in a way where I always say your side of the street is clean, you do it in a kind, compassionate way, how they respond to it is absolutely their stuff, and that gives you more information about them. Is this someone that I want in my life? How close do I want this person in my life?
Right.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, are there people that, I don't know, they have a projection? They project what they want on that. They meet somebody and they think a certain thing. Like for me, for instance, people think about me being a celebrity, but I'm really not. And it's like their stuff and they project on other people. So when people meet people, do they tend to sometimes project their own stuff on that, what they want that person to be, or?
They do. I mean, it happens a lot in relationships. Everything that we haven't resolved from our own, relationship gets projected onto our significant other. I mean, it just happens. And celebrities is a big thing. I have, some of my clients tell me stories that they'll be walking down the street and someone will go, "Hey," and they'll say their name, "Fuck you," and what did I do? I'm just at a bar mitzvah.
Or the other one is that you'll say, "Hi," as if they know you.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of, because you see them maybe in your living room every week, or now downloaded for 8 hours, right? With we used to have to wait a week for the next episode, but now you can watch everything all at once, right? So you do kind of feel that you know them, but I think that's part of what comes with that profession, and you have to be a little bit more tolerant.
And between the two of you, how much of this do you think is inherited, and how much is learned or gathered as you live your life? Behave with difficult people, like in your makeup, your heredity. Is there some inherited qualities that you're open to conflict more than others, or is it something you learn, or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's something, probably both, but you learn from families. So if, like, my family was all conflict oriented, they would just, and I know other families that you don't say a word.
Yeah.
You keep it in, you don't say a word.
Yeah.
And I would walk into these families and I'd be like, oh, we don't talk. Okay. I forgot. I didn't know the rules. I didn't read. But what do you think, Shirley?
That was more mine.
Yeah, yours was kind of quiet,
I had
right?
one therapist that described, you lived in an emotional desert. And I went, oh, what a great way of saying it. But it is. And so what happens is many times, the brain likes what's familiar, even if what's familiar isn't the best thing for you, but it feels safer because I know how to anticipate, like I know how to live in chaos. I know how to anticipate it. It feels safe because I know it.
Right.
And so many times we'll attract people in our lives of stuff that has been familiar when they're not, in our best interest. So that we have to be careful about too.
Yeah. So tell us the different types of difficult people. I know we talked about it earlier. You said you have like the
passive aggressive.
The passive aggressive
is kind of, I think, the worst because they're not in touch with their feelings and they're very afraid of anger. And so many people are afraid of anger. It's almost like a 4-letter word. And anger is life force. If we weren't able to get angry, we weren't able in the caveman days to, stop that animal from charging us. You have to get angry to protect yourself. And it's just become such a bad name because we mix the emotion of anger with the behavior of anger. And those are two very different things. The emotion of anger, I can be unbelievably angry right now and you might never know it, because I don't want to show it as an example. How we behave is very different. So there are many people that are uncomfortable with anger, so they never get angry. But they'll do things because anger is energy, like every other emotion. You can't get rid of it, even if you ignore it. That I'll do things that just kind of, like I always give the example of, I can't stand this person, but I bake a cake for their birthday to show how lovely it is. But I bake chocolate knowing they hate chocolate. But oh my God, I forgot that you hate chocolate. I thought you loved chocolate. That would be like a passive aggressive move, right?
Such a good one,
right?
And if they put nuts in and you're allergic to nuts, that's really bad.
Then they're really mad. They want to kill you.
I actually had a client whose husband was having an affair. He was alcoholic, and the woman that he had the affair with just kept feeding him alcohol cake.
Oh,
yes, yeah. So then he became an alcoholic again. Yeah, that was really sad.
Wow, that's a great example of passive aggressive. Okay, that's number one.
Yeah,
I'm making notes.
So it's really hard because the truth is that they're not fully aware of it. So when you point it out to them, they can go, "No, I didn't mean that at all." And they really, at times, it's not because they're not fully aware of it.
Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
Yeah. For the most part, I found that they're not. Otherwise they'd be sociopaths because they'd be calculating. How am I going to? So they're not really aware of their anger, but it shows up. But if you bring it up, they're saying no, and so you kind of look like the crazy one. That's at the core.
Several times.
Yeah. So you have a big reaction to it, and they're looking at you going, "What?" Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Cheryl. Where does the aggressive, like how a person says some mean things, like they just say mean things, and they're trying to be funny, but they're mean. What would you call
sarcasm?
That?
There's a lot of There's a lot of hostility under sarcasm. That's another person that maybe isn't comfortable saying, "Wow, what you just said really hurt my feelings." So instead, I'm going to say something really sarcastic back that really gets you, or that hits below the belt.
Well, what about if it's someone that you just met at a restaurant and they're sitting there and they're nasty to you, like? One guy just had a dinner with someone or lunch with some people, and he didn't believe what I did. He made some weird gesture about something. Like, where is that coming from? He doesn't even know me. But it was a sarcasm. It was a biting.
I don't like that. I don't like it. Yeah. It's so hostile. I don't like it. And it's passive aggressive.
It's very hostile.
Sometimes it's just aggressive.
Yeah. Sometimes, and it could be
mean-spirited.
I don't
like it.
Spirited.
It could be that he had a bad experience, with someone, or he doesn't,
doesn't believe in what I do.
Doesn't believe in you. There's no reason to be mean about it. I mean, you guys aren't running around trying to convince people, So there's no reason to. It could be part of personality. A lot of times it's unresolved, trauma. I mean, we're not born that way. We might have a genetic predisposition to things, but truly the love and nurturing you get in your home decides whether that gene gets expressed or stays dormant. So we're truly not born that way. So if someone is like that, I just, the older I get, they fall into, life's too short. And I just don't want to be around people like that anymore. I
send them love. I just give them love. I feel sorry for them. I empath. I just give them love. I've met people, I just look at them and all of a sudden I start crying because they have no clue about who they are and they don't love themselves. It's like, oh my God. And I just send love because it's not my stuff. We have to realize it's not our stuff. And what's coming up a lot lately is you can't save people from their journey. They got to go on their journey in their own way. Right, Kelly? We talk about that.
We talk about this every day.
We want to help them, but we can only do so much, right?
And everybody will have those troubling times and relationships and all kinds of things that they have to go inward and do their work with a therapist or with something. They need to do their own work because it makes we can't do it for them, James. So we could certainly give them all the information in the world and all the tools. Ultimately, they have to do it themselves.
I'm glad that you're saying that. You're both saying that because sometimes, I have to remind myself that people are on their own journey and I have to take a step back.
Shirley, for sure.
I think I do that because the shows and meet people and every day that's their journey. I can't give them seed, but that's their journey.
Yeah. But with difficult people also, especially if there's someone in your life that you can't really avoid, like maybe at work or even a relative or something, is to be curious as to why they're like that. And so then it kind of softens it.
So would you say to the difficult person that you're working, why are you like that?
Why are you such a jerk? No, for yourself. Because it's very hard to have to deal with someone who's difficult, and if you have to deal with them ongoing, like at work or a relative or something like that, to be curious. And that sometimes can soften how it lands on you, and it's still going to be hard, difficult
so when you
to deal with.
But to be curious, like, I'm wondering if they went through a lot of trauma in their life.
Yeah, I wonder what they went through. Yeah, and then really, either prepare yourself mentally before you deal with them because what you're up against for the most part. Set boundaries. I mean, boundaries is a big one.
It's a big one.
And
it saves lives. It really does.
It really does. And sometimes, I view people like that in our lives as to give you an opportunity to practice something that isn't easy, like setting a boundary or like conflict. If conflict isn't easy, they're there. I view those people as there to, help me or help the people that I work with, to give them opportunities to practice difficult, things that are difficult.
That our families that we're born into are our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
Because we're connected to them. So if something within them makes you angry, what within yourself are you not whole with? That you have to look at that you're still angry. Yeah. Families, great teachers.
Oh, so true. Talk to us about negative people, Shirley. Like negative people. Like if you've got a real negative person in your life.
Well, looks at life like that. There's always pessimism.
Well, yeah. I mean, that is so difficult because it really kind of brings the energy down.
Right.
It can really make the energy toxic. And so either that's what they heard, so it's role model behavior, or they've just had a lot of, hurtful things that have happened to them, and they've just see the world through those glasses of just always like the half empty cup versus the half full cup. And I try to shift it just a little bit if I can, so they'll say something that you hear about, I don't know, something negative. And then I'll say, yeah. And did you also hear about that woman that helped the other woman? So I'll try to just, because that at the very least, that kind of balance the energy, because it's hard to always hear everything negative.
I think there are studies done that one negative comment takes 20 positive comments to erase that one negative comment. 20
really?
Wow.
Yeah, I heard that from a study that was done.
Thanks, Shirley. Bye, James. Love you guys.
Bye.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now and Beyond, featuring spiritual medium and master teacher James Van Praagh and spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kelly White.
That was great. Maybe we changed some lives.
And maybe opened up some minds.
Which way do I turn?
Right. I mean left.